What's up, people of the internet? My name is Dabacap, and today we're going to talk about Zeus. Specifically, what do you need to do to win games with Zeus in your deck? So stay tuned. Alright, so Zeus. Let me start off by saying that Zeus is one of the most fun cards that I played with at PAX. He's just exciting. Making it to turn 7, that delightful 7 mana, and playing at Thunder God's Wrath is so much fun. Oh, it's so rewarding, and you've got that really cool animation. So I really love this card, and I'm looking forward to playing him in my blue decks. And I'm sure that when you get a chance to play with Zeus, you will be shocked by how much fun he is. So I've been doing a little bit of theory crafting and thinking about how we can best use Zeus to win games in our decks. So first off, let's take a look at Zeus's stats. He's a 3/7, which is kind of average by blue standards. His passive ability is not bad. Basically, whenever you play a blue spell, he does 1 piercing damage to his enemy neighbors. It's okay, not the strongest passive we've seen by any means, but it's certainly stronger than other blue passives like Luna's. So we've got some potential synergy right off the bat with cheap blue spells. Potentially, you can cast a number of blue spells one after the other, and even if those spells themselves don't deal any damage, they could potentially kill the units in front of Zeus with 1 damage after 1 damage after 1 damage, because eventually that stuff can add up. Luckily, blue has a decent number of cheap blue spells to choose from. We have Ventriloquy and Cunning Plan if you're looking for a little bit of battlefield control. Cunning Plan especially has double synergy with Zeus. Not only can you flip him to a different spot on the field to potentially save him from dying, but also you can reposition him so that his static field will hit the targets that you want to hit. So Cunning Plan has some excellent synergy with Zeus, and if you're looking for a little bit of card draw as well, I might recommend this card. Diabolic Revelation, also a somewhat tempting option just because it's so cheap, and I would especially want to consider Tower Barrage and Strafing Run. These two cards both deal damage to the enemy lane. One damages all enemies while the other one just damages creeps. What I like about these two cards is that they give a little bit of a damage boost to Zeus's passive, so it'll be 2 to everyone else, but 3 to the targets directly across from Zeus. As for hero synergy, Zeus is actually one of the more flexible heroes. He doesn't have a lot of pro synergy or anti synergy towards any other hero, meaning that he can fit in just about any deck that uses blue. I will say though that he has some decent synergy with Crystal Maiden. Crystal Maiden restores 2 mana when you cast a spell for the first time in each lane, so this could potentially combo quite well with Zeus's passive. The idea is you play a spell, get the Zeus's ping, refund some of your mana, and then play another spell for another damage. And of course, one of the nice things about Zeus's passive is that it's more effective if you cast lots of very cheap spells. And one of the interesting interactions with Crystal Maiden's passive is that if you cast a 1 mana spell, it refunds 2 mana, meaning you can actually gain total mana for that turn. You can't go over your maximum mana, so of course if you play a creep and you go from, let's say, maximum 7 mana down to 4, then you play a 1 mana spell like Ventriloquy, you'll go from 4 to 3 for the Ventriloquy cost, and then Crystal Maiden will bring you back up 2 to 5 mana, and that will give you more flexibility to cast more Zeus spells for more pings. My boy Jamoy also has some decent okay synergy with Zeus. His active ability can be used to draw a card, which will help you thin the deck to find that amazing Thunder God's Wrath. Also, Battlefield Control is a very cheap 1 mana card, which you can use to get some extra damage out of his passive and make sure that Zeus wins those combat engagements. And finally, Ogre Magi is a really tempting option with Zeus. His passive ability gives you a 25% chance to return a cast spell to your hand, which means you could potentially chain gun several copies of a spell and get extra pings. Plus, we're not exactly 100% sure what his premier spell does because the leak isn't complete, but what it looks like it does is that it's a 3 mana blue improvement that when you put it in a lane, it deals 1 piercing damage to all opponents. And if that's the case, that synergizes quite well with Zeus's piercing damage on his passive. So overall, I would say Zeus and Ogre Magi fit together quite well. Plus, there's the small 25% chance that you will cast Thunder God's Wrath and immediately get another Thunder God's Wrath to completely devastate your opponents. Now let's talk about his incredibly fun premier card, Thunder God's Wrath, which deals 4 piercing damage to each and every enemy in every lane. So this is a powerful card. Anything that kills enemies is fantastic. If you compare it to Pick Off at 4 mana, you can see just how much more powerful Thunder's God Wrath really is. Sure, Pick Off can be used much cheaper and it can target creep, but Thunder God's Wrath does potentially 20 damage, 20 piercing damage, so the potential is just through the roof. I will say though that while 4 damage to each hero is a lot in total, a lot of heroes just won't really be bothered. Tidehunter and Centaur Warrunner have so much health that 4 piercing damage isn't going to do much. So ideally you're going to be using this against much weaker heroes like green or blue heroes who have much smaller health pool. So I'm concerned that Zeus might struggle a bit against red decks just because the damage that he brings to the table won't be enough to take down those massively tanky red heroes. However, you can counteract that a bit by choosing very synergistic heroes to add next to Zeus. Because Zeus is so good at killing heroes in all lanes, what you want to do is take a look at heroes that benefit from enemies dying. Bristleback is one such hero. The way Bristleback's ability reads, he doesn't actually have to deal the killing blow to get that +2 armor. So if Bristleback is simply across from an enemy hero and that hero dies to Thunder God's Wrath, Bristleback will instantly gain that +2 armor. The same goes for Necrophos. If Necrophos is across from an enemy allied hero, then Thunder God's Wrath will buff Necrophos with +1 health if it kills that hero. I could also see a bit of synergy with heroes that really want to hit the tower, heroes like Sorlakan and Riley the Cunning. In the ideal world, Sorlakan will never hit another unit, she will always smack the tower. So potentially Thunder God's Wrath can help clear the lane and give Sorlakan that shot she needs to take out the enemy tower. Moving on to creep, an obvious choice is the Satyr Magician. This card has an active ability with a 1-turn cooldown that completely restores your mana. That's a fantastic option for Zeus because his spell is so incredibly expensive. Plus, I can imagine a best case scenario where you also have Ogre Magi on the field. So you play Thunder God's Wrath, zap people in front of you for 1 piercing damage, Thunder God's Wrath the entire board, you get a copy of Thunder God's Wrath back from your hand because of Ogre Magi. Then you click the Satyr Magician's ability, get all your mana back, and then cast that spell again. More than likely, this will completely devastate the enemy board and might even end up with a pentakill. Of course, pulling that combo off will be a little bit difficult and a little bit lucky, so we can't always rely on it, but sometimes it'll happen, and when it does, it will be spectacular. You also might want to consider Rebel Decoy. Any card that you can use to move around and protect your blue heroes is fantastic because they're just so squishy. So Rebel Decoy has the same advantages as Cunning Plan. He can move your Zeus away from danger and put him in front of enemy neighbors that will benefit you the most from his passive. Speaking of swapping places, moving on to items, you have a lot of flexibility with items, but of course Phase Boot and Blink Dagger are pretty good options because, like I said before, they move Zeus around to make sure that he can be safe from danger. As for weaknesses, Zeus basically has to watch out for any hero with high attack, and unfortunately there are a lot of heroes who can one-shot Zeus. Bristleback, Axe, Riley the Cunning, Phantom Assassin, the list goes on. He just doesn't have that impressive of a body. However, he does have to watch out for Pugna. If you play a blue deck that's all about chain gunning lots of cheap spells, then Pugna's Nether Ward will absolutely devastate Zeus. As for general strategy, the game plan with Zeus is to stall out until you hit 7 mana. So you want slow, tanky effects, you want to try to wipe the board. Cards like Conflagration can slowly whittle down the opponent along with Static Field, which will stop damage coming in and help you reach those late game turns. You might want to consider defensive and healing based options. Omni Knight and Enchantress might be decent choices. But as fragile as Zeus is, the odds are he's probably going to die. So one thing you might want to consider is in fact ensuring that he dies on turn 5. Because you don't really need him around until turn 7. So let him die when you have 5 mana, he'll be on cooldown when you have 6 mana, and then come back onto the board at 7 mana ready to cast Thunder God's Wrath. Of course, with Thunder God's Wrath, you need to keep in mind that the ideal scenario is that you cast it in lane 1. The further along the lane you get, the weaker the spell becomes. For example, if you cast Thunder God's Wrath in lane 1, you could potentially kill heroes in lanes 2 and 3, thus preventing the enemy from casting spells spells in those lanes. Alternatively, if you wait until lane 3 to cast Thunder God's Wrath, then even if you do kill heroes, they've already benefited from that turn. They've already made their attacks and they've already cast their spells, so you're not going to get a whole lot of mileage. So in fact, letting Zeus die on turn 5 can be an incredible advantage, because you can then place Zeus in lane 1 with full health and potentially initiative, meaning there's nothing the opponent can do to stop you from casting Thunder God's Wrath. Of course, if you do kill heroes, it's important to understand that Zeus isn't really your win condition. He helps you set up for the win condition, because even if you do wipe the enemy board of all the heroes and get a pentakill, he's still just sitting there with his measly 3 attacks, so he's not going to do all that much. The rest of your deck needs to be able to capitalize on this opening that Zeus creates for you. If you wipe out the heroes from a lane, that gives you an uncontested turn to play some heavy hitting creep or some completely runaway card like Red Mist Pillager, and then start snowballing towards victory. So while it might be tempting to put a lot of very heavy hitting spells like Eclipse or Echo Slam in your deck, you need to be worried that you don't overcommit to the spell angle, because after all, spells generally only wipe the enemy board. Once you wipe the enemy board, you have to be able to deal damage to the tower afterwards. So those are some basic tips and tricks that can help you win with Zeus. What do you think of this card? Personally, I love it. I don't know how strong he is quite yet, but he's just so much fun to play. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think of Zeus. Thank you so much for watching. Dabcab out.